the x20 Kaio-ken on Namek. I think it's fair to say that this is a scene that epitomizes everything that Dragon Ball is seen to be about. Admittedly, I've gone back and forth on the matter, but time and time again, I found myself coming to call this scene my absolute favorite from the series. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. From the shocking realization that Goku is using the Kaio-ken already, to Goku's battle cry to the breathtaking Kamehameha, it's easy to see why this scene is remembered as fondly as it is. But this iconic scene has had many different iterations over the last 25 years, and believe it or not, there are some key differences between them. And today I will be focusing and reviewing 4 of them. Going in order of release, I will first take a look at the original manga chapter from 1991, the original Japanese broadcast from the same year, followed by the Funimation edit and dub from 1999, capping it all off with Dragon Ball Z Kai's redubbed version from the year 2010 to round out our 4 options. But the interesting thing about this video is that I won't be the one deciding which one is best at the end. You will. Once each of these versions has been reviewed and broken down, I will, at the end of this video, offer you the viewer a chance to vote in a poll for your favorite telling of this epic scene. With that out of the way, let's begin with the very first time we see this legendary scene hit the public eye. And to do that, we have to go all the way back to February 19th. 1991. Titled Kaio-ken x20, this was written and drawn entirely by Akira Toriyama in the early 90s, distributed to the public via Weekly Shonen Jump. The cover art for this chapter sees an exhausted Goku at his limit, with his hands up ready to continue fighting as a smug Frieza and concerned King Kai look on. This particular chapter is exactly 14 pages long, beginning right after King Kai reveals that Goku had in fact been using the Kaio-ken x10 to no effect against Frieza, which is the last panel of the previous chapter. Man, that's one major cliffhanger. But enough of the previous chapter. How does this chapter tell the events? Well, it begins as you might expect, with Frieza absolutely brutalizing Goku, and try as he might, cannot come close to matching Frieza in this face-off, who, while glaring and grinning at Goku, casually slices a hole in the planet's surface, leaving a shocked Goku to remark, "Oh boy, I can't win." The artwork during this section of the story is a transitional period for Akira Toriyama. He's not quite the hyper-angular artist he would eventually become in the Buu saga, but he's certainly not retaining the round, soft approach from earlier Dragon Ball either. That aside, this era of Toriyama provided some of my favorite illustrations for the entire series. The scene continues as Frieza flies up and lands in front of Goku, reassuring him he won't kill him just like that slash he made to the planet. That would be terribly unsatisfying. Meanwhile, the guys in Otherworld are panicking. King Kai warned him not to tangle with Frieza. King Kai remarks, he's lost. But Goku has an idea. I could try a Kaio-ken increase to 20 times. On one hand, there's the very real possibility that Goku's body can take the sudden surge of power. And on the other, if Frieza wasn't bluffing and is only using half of his true power, then it's useless anyway. But Goku assumes that he is bluffing. Using his trump card, the Kaio-ken, in ways he never thought he'd have to, he begins to power up, as a massive aura starts to envelop his body, staring daggers through Frieza. He thinks to himself, please, let him be bluffing this time. Goku explodes off the mark with a massive punch connecting with Frieza, catching the tyrant off guard. Goku chases after, chanting, Ka, Mei. He attempts to punch again, but this time Frieza evades. Ha, Mei. Goku locks eyes with Frieza and releases at that moment the most powerful blast the entire series has seen. Frieza, extending one hand to deflect the blast, is smothered in the white force of the Kamehameha as it erupts in a massive explosion covering the sky. As Goku looks on, exhausted, the smoke clears, revealing a living, albeit slightly bruised, Frieza. The final panel of this chapter is colored black, Goku now having gotten the confirmation that Frieza wasn't bluffing. Alright, next up, the original Japanese broadcast. Original release, May 15th, 1991. Airing only about 12 weeks after the manga's release of that very chapter, titled Showdown, the embodiment of flame in a 20 times Kaio-ken Kamehameha. Toei Animation broadcasted the very first animated version of this scene everyone in Japan and many around the world would see. So let's talk about it. The first thing I noticed with this version of the scene was what they added to enrich what was to come. For instance, as Frieza was decimating Goku, the animators went above and beyond the call of duty in making this beatdown at the hands of Frieza as visceral as possible. You can feel every last blow. Even this creepy but admittedly effective angle. What's more is once the dialogue between King Kai and Tenshinhan takes place and it's revealed that Goku has in fact been using the Kaio-ken the entire time, the audience is shown similar footage from before, only this time with the Kaio-ken visible to us. It's extremely effective and served to surprise me on multiple viewings. However, while visual changes like that expand on the manga's material to enhance it, other changes, while made in the same spirit, fundamentally change the scene from Akira Toriyama's source manga. This change is present in all subsequent iterations of this scene, so I'll leave it up to you to decide if it's welcome or takes from the original intent of the scene. After being knocked into a Namekian lake, Goku struggles to reach the surface for air, only to be met by Frieza moments before his head breaches the water. Frieza, using only his foot, forces the Saiyan underwater until finally he loses consciousness. Goku at this time enters a dreamlike state where he has visions of what is at stake and what is on the line. There's imagery of his loved ones as well as Frieza laughing psychotically. With that, Goku's eyes shoot open and a massive surge of energy pushes Frieza off of him. And this is where things get even further from the manga. Goku says, "For the future of Gohan, Chi-Chi, Earth, and planet Namek, I absolutely must not lose." This is distinctly different from Akira Toriyama's original vision, where Goku didn't claim to be doing this for anyone in particular, but instead focused on the legitimacy of Frieza's claim to be using only 50% of his full power, trying to weigh up his options in a strategic manner. Once these lines are uttered, however, this scene returns pretty faithfully to what the manga portrayed, albeit with a few angles altered for the sake of animation flow. Everything looks spectacular. Animated by a young Tadayoshi Yamamura, who would later become the series' character designer and eventually the animation director for Dragon Ball Super. This scene has a lot of weight and impact to it, complemented, as I said, with the extreme angles and some wonderful use of colors and effects work. Goku in this version is voiced by none other than Masako Nozawa, who in this scene delivers one of my favorite performances from her. The delivery is very convincing and matches the tension the scene is trying to convey perfectly. Notice the stress but measured delivery.
50% のパワーだというあいつの言葉がはったりだろうとそうでなかろうと20倍海王圏にかけるしかねえ
And finally, the music throughout this iteration of the show was produced by the immensely talented Shunsuke Kikuchi. Fans of this version enjoy his uplifting melodies as well as his iconic battle scores. Noteworthy as well regarding the sound design of this particular section, there are moments where they decided the scene would be better served with no music, and chose their moments accordingly. Next up, the early Funimation English dub. Original release, October 12th, 1999. Over 8 years after the original air date in Japan, folks in the West finally got an English dub of this scene. However, there are a few noteworthy changes to both the script and musical score, as I'm sure you are all aware. Titled Embodiment of Fire, this interpretation of events is pretty much one-to-one with the original Japanese version visually. So let's begin by discussing the dialogue differences, ranging from minor alterations like referring to the Kaio-ken technique as the Kaio-ken, to changing the thought process of Goku entirely from what the manga had written him as. Moments before Goku is cast into the lake by Frieza, he says, "You might be stronger, 100 times stronger than me, Frieza, and you may have me down. But I am not about to give up now, and I will do whatever it takes, even if it destroys me, to finish you off once and for all, to give you what you deserve." This is a particularly interesting choice of dialogue for one of two reasons. Firstly, it's a world away from the strategic and overly negative mindset Goku was in during this point of the manga, where he was trying to gauge whether or not Frieza was bluffing. But secondly, because...
And I don't care if you're a million times stronger than me! Mark my words, I'm not going to let them down!
If this was something he came to a realization about during his existential nightmare underwater, then it might serve a somewhat similar purpose to what the Japanese version attempted to present. However, because this is something he had said earlier in the episode, he really only is reiterating what he said prior, which can serve its own strength in a different way, I guess. The English version of Goku has an unfettered resolve in the face of absolute destruction. Fighting for his loved ones, he is not going to compromise his beliefs despite knowing he is outmatched, which I'm sure is something that interests a lot of English speakers who grew up with the show. Myself included, this gave me goosebumps when I watched it as a kid. It's an inspirational outlook. However, it does serve to further distance itself from the original Japanese broadcast and even further again from the original manga source, which might matter to you depending on your outlook. The voice of Goku in this scene is performed by a young Sean Schimmel. Something that I think is worth noting and interesting is that this is near the very beginning of his voice acting career, having only voiced Goku for about 20 or so episodes prior to this very episode, with the role of Goku being his first outing into the voice acting sphere. Through Sean's own admission, it wasn't a profession he ever thought he would find himself taking part in. Despite this, however, he has gone on the record in saying that during these recording sessions he made a concerted effort to make each screen distinct from one another, showing not only an interest in this area he suddenly found himself in, but also an enthusiasm to make the show as good as he possibly could within what he had control over. Lastly, and quite possibly the most obvious difference between this version and others, is the inclusion of the Bruce Faulconer score, what might amount to guitar solos and synth rock in places. On this particular outing, in this particular scene, the score is much more withdrawn and subdued, achieving a very distinct atmosphere compared to its Japanese counterpart. For example, with that done and out of the way, it's time to jump forward to Dragon Ball Z Kai. Original release, February 21st and November 17th, 2010. Entitled Kaio-ken x20 and All or Nothing Kamehameha, this episode was redubbed and released on the 21st of February 2010 in Japan, and later that year on November 17th in English. The driving force behind the Dragon Ball Kai redub of the series was to essentially have a recut streamlined version of the original run of the Dragon Ball anime, aiming to cut out much more of the filler portions to the story where possible. However, and interestingly, this particular scene and collection of events associated hasn't had anything of substance taken from its initial release. All of the footage for the most part is present in this iteration, so let's focus on the dialogue, delivery of lines, and music. The distinctions between the Japanese dialogue in Kai and the original broadcast, while they exist, are minor at best and pretty much remain as faithful as they ever have been, with the same voice actors demonstrating fantastic performances. However, there are distinct changes to the English redubbing of this scene, having brought themselves closer to the Japanese version considerably. Goku now comments on whether or not Frieza is in fact serious about his claim of using only 50%. With that said though, it does strain again towards the end of the Kaio-ken monologue where Goku says, "I just gotta give it my all and show this guy you do not mess with me and my friends." Again, this leans into the altruistic hero type character which Akira Toriyama intentionally steered away from during his version of the scene. With that said though, it is noticeable that 20 years of playing Goku has given Sean Schimmel a greater comfort in the role of Goku, delivering lines as naturally as you would expect from a seasoned professional. Of note also is the new addition of Chris Ayres taking the role of Frieza, a person who, like the Japanese voice actor of Frieza, was almost born to play this role.
This is no time to be bemoaning your fate. After all, fate is not the culprit here. That honor goes to your stubborn sense of self-worth.
On the music front, as we've discussed in other videos, the score for this version was created by Kenji Yamamoto and employs a more traditional orchestral approach, creating an uplifting, inspirational feeling as Goku raises himself from the water. With all that said and done, let's do something a little different. How about we see how the climaxes of these scenes compare? That's right, we're going to compare all of these Kamehamehas, beginning with the earliest in the manga version and finishing with the latest in the Kai versions. And so, to kick things off, I'm going to lend my voice to the manga version. So, as promised, now that I have broken down the original manga chapter from 1991, the original Japanese broadcast from the same year, the early Funimation dub from 1999, and the Dragon Ball Kai version from 2010, I would like to present you with the opportunity to cast your vote. Click here and let us know which interpretation of events outlined you think presented it best. Don't forget to leave a comment to let us know why you chose what you chose, and if you have any suggestions for other scenes I should compare, leave them down below there in the comment section too. Don't forget to leave a like or dislike, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.